Hello, my name is Judy Kuntz, and I am a volunteer producer for the Traverse Area Community Media Public Access TV station, which is on Charter Channel 189 in Traverse City and the larger region. Our program today is the third in our 2020 candidate series, and we're bringing you information on candidates who will be in primary races in August in our viewing region. In addition to viewing on the TV channel, you can access the program through our online portal, tacm.tv. On the home page, you will see a number of options, including volunteering, watch now, and one of the most important ones is the search option. The video will also hopefully be on the candidates website, which we will display at the bottom of the screen several times during the program. Now I'd like to introduce Beth McGill Rizer from Ludington, who will be in the August primary. Welcome to Traverse Area Community Media. Hello, Beth.
Hello, Judy. Thanks for inviting me. And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to talk to your viewers. Thank you, Traverse Area Community Media, for providing such a great service.
Well, we're happy to do that, and that's part of our mission. So Beth, you are running to be the Democratic candidate for the seat in the State House of Representatives for the 101st District. That includes Leelanau, Benzie, Mason, Manistee, and did I get them all? Leelanau, Benzie, Mason, and Manistee counties, 4 of them. That's a pretty good sized district. How do you feel about that?
It's a large district, a lot of roadway, but as you can imagine with COVID, we're not doing as much driving as we would normally do during a regular campaign. So we're doing, like you are today, we do a lot of Zoom. But it is a very large district and it takes a long time to get to anywhere.
Well, I live in Northport, so from here it does take a long time to get to anywhere. I haven't figured out how to get my horse to fly yet, so that's not working. But anyway, well, again, welcome to the area. And I have been to Ludington and considered it as one of the potential places we moved to, but we ended up choosing Northport for now. So, of course, it would be so nice to be able to do this in person, but it's not feasible right now. Beth, can you take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself? Tell us about yourself, your background, and your qualifications for state office.
I'm running for the 101st State House of Representatives because on November 9th of 2016, I woke up to the news that the most qualified person that had ever run for office had been defeated in the Electoral College by the least qualified person to ever run for office. The reason why that was so important to me was that my children and my grandchildren all use the Affordable Care Act. And I knew that they were all going to be put at risk with this administration. And I said, someone needed to do something. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm somebody, what am I gonna do? Now, I had in the past been involved with protest. I, of course, had voted, I donated money, I had volunteered on campaigns, but I wasn't really involved in party politics. So upon moving up to the Ludington area, I connected with the Mason County Democratic Party and started volunteering with Mason County Democrats. And part of my role was to recruit candidates. And the question kept coming up over and over again, well, why don't you run? And I realized that I couldn't ask someone else to do something that I wasn't willing to do. And since we were experiencing a leadership vacuum in this district, I thought it was important to bring leadership to this district. And that's what I believe I can bring. Strong communities exist because of strong leaders, and strong leaders collaborate, they're change agents, and they provide vision. My experience in healthcare, the military, as a small business owner, and a community leader demonstrate that strong leadership. Strong communities require modern infrastructure, that yet protects our environment. We need public schools that provide students with an excellent education and our educators with a fair wage and benefit and a recognition of the professionalism they bring. COVID-19 showed us how fragile our healthcare system is. We need to keep our rural hospitals open and attract providers to them.
Well, Beth, it certainly sounds like you've taken the measure of the area and that you have some very, very solid measuring sticks from your whole life on which to rely. So we'll move forward and start getting a little bit more specific about some of the things that potential constituents in this area are interested in. Let's talk a little bit about the format. I will be asking you a series of questions that relate to areas of legislative concern, and many of these you have published in your top 10 list. On your website, that top 10 list is on your website. I am only one constituent voter in the 101st District. So what I did was reach out to voting members of the 101st District from Leelanau County and other counties to ask them this question: what issue or topic would you ask a candidate for state representative for the 101st District about to help them evaluate the candidate and their values and policy positions? That's the question I asked. I didn't say names or anything like that. So the questions today are a combination of both some questions that I formulated and some of the respondents formulated or gave me permission to set up a question regarding their issue. Okay.
Great.
Okay, so Beth, I'm not going to time your answers. That's so unnatural. But I want you to keep in mind that succinct and shorter answers allow us to cover more questions. Okay, so best at this, and we'll see how we go. Okay. One of your campaign bywords is the word dignity. Why did you choose that value as a standard for your campaign? And how do you see this value impacting your ability to represent the citizens of the 101st District?
One of the things that's very important to me is that people feel valued. We actually took our top 10 list one day and we went through and we assigned values to all of the different items in there. And dignity showed up under work and jobs as our group identified it. And jobs are important, not just because we need money to pay our bills, but they give us something else. And I think COVID-19 has really shown that it's more than a job, it's more than a paycheck, that we use our employment to socialize as well. And it also gives us dignity. And that's what's important to me, is that every person in this district feels that they have dignity.
Okay, thank you very much for that. A couple of questions on general questions about being an advocate for the 101st District, or just being an advocate, you know, in the next couple years here. First of all, what are the first three things that you would do when you reach the State House?
I would have a lot to learn. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I know everything. So there's going to be a lot of learning going on and a lot of listening going on. But I'll tell you, one of the most important things to me is making sure that the health and safety in our district is addressed, that our priorities are set. And the best way to do that is by looking at our checkbook. When we look at the budget in our checkbook, where are we spending our money? And what I want to do is make sure that we are spending money on our infrastructure so that we have jobs, that we're spending money on education so our kids are educated and our teachers are well compensated, And I'm interested in healthcare. I came from a healthcare background. I retired from healthcare. It's a very important issue to me. And especially in our rural districts, making sure our hospitals stay open and that we find qualified providers, we recruit them to the area and we keep them in the area. And that we cultivate providers out of our area, that we send our young people off to school and we get them to come back and stay in our area. So definitely our infrastructure, our education, and our healthcare.
Okay, so you're not going to go play tennis the first day. No.
Well, if you
No.
want me to play tennis, absolutely not. I will not be playing tennis.
Okay. Okay. Just trying to lighten it up a little bit. It can get pretty serious running for office.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Okay. The second question on that, kind of like being an advocate, what committees would you like to serve on? And why do you feel you would be an effective member of those committees?
Healthcare, obviously. One, because I'm bringing a long background in healthcare. I actually began my training in healthcare in high school. I attended vocational training. And then I started working in hospital afterwards, and I worked in a hospital throughout my career in the field of pharmacy while I attended college and paid my way through school. And it was that college education got promotion to where I was the technician trainer in our pharmacy for the technical part of our staff and our pharmacist. And so I think I can bring a lot to healthcare. Education, I've been a substitute teacher, so I've had some experience in the classroom. And I think those are my top two priorities. And then I really would like to be involved in anything that helps the rural areas with communication. Cell service, broadband. You know, we talked about I'm not at home because I have terrible internet service at home. And so I can't even conduct an interview over the internet because my internet service is so bad at home. And there are areas that are worse than mine. And again, COVID-19, you know, remote working. Some people couldn't work remotely because of their internet service. And some of our students weren't getting the same educational opportunities because of that. So communications and technology as well.
Well, if you get on those committees, you're going to be really, really busy. So,
yeah, I expect so.
Well, and that's what you want to be, okay?
Yeah, I'm used to being busy.
Good, good. Okay, well, veering into some, well, they're all serious subjects, but veering into the economy, okay? You've talked a little bit about that. And one thing I didn't say earlier is that even though I'm asking a question that might be more, pointedly toward a particular topic, there's a lot of crossover, okay? So if there's a particular need to cross over into another area in order to give your full view about or answer to that question, feel free to do that, okay?
Great.
Okay, so COVID-19 has put a huge pressure on the economy everywhere. In this region, how would you promote short-term relief for families, businesses, and what longer-term economic development projects would you see as viable and helpful in the 101st District?
Well, in the short term, we are going to have to tap into our rainy day fund. That's the most immediate available fund that we have. So in terms of a short-term solution, that's your short-term solution. It's also making sure that we don't leave any money on the table when the federal government is putting out grants and loans out there. We need to make sure that we're picking up everything that we can that will help our constituents. The long term is much harder. The long term, we have to go back to looking at our checkbook again. How do we get people back to work? Well, one of the best ways to get people back to work is rebuilding our infrastructure. When we rebuild our infrastructure, those are usually union jobs with union wages. That helps to put money back into our coffers. Those folks are spending money, they're paying taxes. That's a way to bring revenue in. So we're going to have to look our budget. We're going to have to accept federal assistance. We've got to get people back to work. We need to get kids back to school. And we need to make sure that we are not overlooking anything. Are we looking at what we're wasting? You know, in our budget, look at what waste there is. We're going to have to tighten our belts. This is going to be painful, no matter what we do. There is not going to be a point where we're going to say, oh, this isn't going to hurt somebody. It's going to hurt. We're going to have to look at making sure that people are paying their fair share. You know, our corporations who are utilizing our public services, are they paying enough? You know, when we look at that checkbook, we'll know.
Thank you very much. Yep, that checkbook is always forefront for individuals and organizations and government. So thank you very much. Okay. This is another question that's kind of about the economy, but it kind of crosses over a little bit. We are known for our fruit crops. I live in Northport. I had cherry trees. The cherry trees aged out, so now I don't have cherry trees, but we have lots of cherry trees around us. And we have other crops, peaches, apples, and more. How would you safeguard the agricultural aspect of our region and protect the industries that are invested here?
One of the things that we've done during COVID-19, we actually started it last year, is we bought a hog from one of the 4-H kids. And then when COVID hit and prices started going up, I started asking around and finding out what was available locally from local farmers. We can do the same thing with our local growers, get them to be able to bring more people in. And I know up in your area especially that farmers markets are really important.
Mm-hmm.
I also know that there were a lot of people who were setting up roadside stands so people could shop safely. So we can encourage those things on a local level. But on a larger scale, we have to work with our federal partners, and Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters have done a really good job of making sure that our farmers' products get bought and that they get a fair return on that. We'll have to continue to work on a federal level with that. And we can also work with other countries, just like our governor worked with another country to get PPE for us. We can work with other countries, and it's diplomacy. I know that we haven't seen any of that lately, but that's something that we can do. We need to ask other countries to buy our products. We have great products here, and our vineyards are fantastic up there. I've done the wine tour up there. I'm not much of a drinker, but it was a blast, even for a person who doesn't drink. So I do think that we have to get our products protected. I know that we've been undercut by other countries, but on a state level, that's a little bit harder to do, but we have to partner with our federal partners.
Thank you very much. I'm going to do a follow-up question about that, because you didn't mention anything about how do we actually produce all that, all those things. Who helps the farmers? You know, bringing, you know, having individuals that enjoy working in the agricultural field. It's hard work, or who take satisfaction. It kind of goes back to your question about integrity and dignity in work. So what are some things that could actually attract people potentially to work and be involved in those industries in a variety of different ways?
That's a great question. I mentioned that I had gone through vocational training as a student, and then I went on and got my bachelor's degree. One of the things that we can do is not every kid is cut out for going to a 4-year college. They don't want to, they don't like school, but they're good with their hands, or they love animals. There are other ways to be educated, and we can offer apprenticeships. if we could get our growers and our farmers to offer apprenticeships to these young people and give them the opportunity to learn. So it might not be an algebra class, but they are going to be learning math on the farm. So there are opportunities to reach our young people, and that's even at a high school level, and then move into the community college system and use apprenticeships to attract young people there. And of course, a living wage. Nobody's going to do something that they can't make a living at. So we have to offer a living wage and benefits.
Thank you. That was a little bit, unexpected, maybe, in terms of that question, but I think that your background about education is very, very important, because people forget how much education is a stepping stone to almost any industry, success in any industry, and without it, the industry falters. So thank you very much for that.
And education isn't just limited to the classroom.
No, not at all.
They can be in the fields and in the barns and receive an excellent education.
Well, I've tried to get my son to think that, but no. My daughter planted a garden this summer, so, something's rubbing off. Okay, we're moving on to another topic. This kind of comes under the category of the safety net, and which is, again, coming right in our faces with the COVID-19 issue. But rural and small town areas make up a large part of the 101st District. So the first part of this is, how would you characterize the challenges of serving such a large geographic area in the area of medical care, including preventive medicine? And then the tip over that is, what types of programs, policies, and capital investments would you support to address these challenges?
This is a large district, and during the shutdown, one of the things that was done in our local hospital was a move to telehealth, which is a great idea, except for the areas that don't have broadband service. So that made it difficult for people who didn't have that to use the telehealth system. But physicians use the telephone. Mm-hmm. Some of the consults were done over the phone. For us in this particular area in healthcare, one of the most important things is keeping our rural hospitals open. One of the things that did that was the Medicaid expansion. If we lose that Medicaid expansion, those hospitals are in jeopardy. So we will have to work with our federal partners to try and retain that funding. The other thing is, you can have great hospitals, but if you don't have people to work in them, you can just have a pretty building. So we need to be attracting providers. We need to offer educational opportunities to young people. We need to give people a reason to want to live here. And by providing the infrastructure that's needed, that's something that attracts people. My husband is a physician, and when we were first recruited to this area, we had young children. And we visited some schools, and I had concerns. Even though the schools were ranked really high, the infrastructure was concerning. And that's important to people to come to our area. If we want to attract providers to our area, we're going to need to have the infrastructure in place. We have to have good hospitals. We have to have good schools. We need the broadband service. Just through the COVID-19, we saw kids couldn't get educated and patients couldn't get seen. And there's a learning curve too. Our district's a little bit on the older side. And this is all new technology. I don't know about you, but I've never Zoomed before COVID-19. And it was a little bit of a learning curve, but I can share a screen now.
Well, I share that challenge with you, and yet here I am as well. Okay, I do panic every time, but make sure I have backup. So, okay, well, moving on. I feel like I'm just not giving enough time, but there's lots of things to talk about today. So, okay, another question on the safety net. The challenges caused by COVID-19 include some that may hit families in our area particularly hard. One of these is homelessness because of inability to pay rents, etc. How can our state deal with this possibility and this issue in compassionate and effective ways in the communities in the 101st District?
Well, there are a few things out there right now. We can extend the no eviction notice. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to have to pay their rents. It just means that they're going to pay them when they're at a later date. And this is an unusual circumstance. We can't have people without public utilities. We can't have people without homes. So we need to extend that. The other thing that we need to look at is extending our unemployment benefits for those who are unemployed. And then we have to, as a state, realize how important that safety net is. And we need to do a better job of funding it. I think when you look at our budget, you're going to realize that it really hasn't been a huge priority for us. And it needs to be. This pandemic has shown us how important our social safety net is, how important healthcare is, how important having some type of an income available when you have no control over whether you lose your job or not. And paid time off. Right now, the recommendations are if you're exposed to someone who's positive, you have to stay home. And then how many more days before you're testing positive? So that person's missing a lot of time. And if you listen to people share their experiences, this is not just a bug like the flu that you're down for a week and you get up and you go back to work and everything's fine. We're finding that there's some long-term repercussions, and we're going to need to study that, and we're going to have to deal with that. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, especially in healthcare in this state.
Thank you for that deep dive into that. We're going to change topics. This one is going to be about education. You've already mentioned a few things related to it in relation to other issues, but Michigan's standing in education outcomes could always be improved. I'm sure every state would say that, no matter where they are, but ours certainly can always be improved. What are critical factors facing education in the 101st District and during COVID and beyond?
Poverty. I believe to find a solution to a problem that you need to dig down and find out what the root of the problem is. You can slap Band-Aids on something all day long, but if you don't know what's causing the problem, you cannot find a solution. And if you talk to educators, one of the things that they'll tell you is that poverty impacts their kids and their ability to learn. So we have to lift people out of poverty. The way we do that is with a living wage, good benefits, paid time off. That is what we have to do. We have to recognize the professionalism of our educators, and we need to listen to them. I cannot tell you how many teachers tell me they don't like standardized testing. And where is the evidence that standardized testing is providing our children with a really good education moving forward? Right now, you don't need an ACT or an SAT to get into college all of a sudden. So is this testing absolutely necessary? Is that the best way for our kids to learn? I think what we need to do is we need to go back and we have to listen to teachers. We've gotten away from that. I think teachers feel diminished. Actually, I have a future daughter-in-law, the end of August, who's a school teacher right now. And she's a new teacher. She actually left our state and went to another state, took my son with her. And it's because the wages and the benefits were better where she was going. So we need to find a way to keep our teachers here. We need to support our teachers. We need to recognize that when we talk about sending our kids back to school during COVID-19, that's fine if you don't believe that kids can't carry COVID, which is not true. That is misinformation that's out there. They, in fact, can carry COVID. And when they infect a teacher or a secretary or a janitor or a parapro, that affects all of them. So this decision can't be based solely on, we've got to get our kids back to school. Let's listen to the teachers, because I met with teachers last Friday, and one of them had a great suggestion, because we were talking about some of the parents at home are challenged by the technology. You and I were intimidated by the technology of working remotely. These are people who don't have the equipment they need, and the schools were providing it, but then they give it to them. What are they going to do with it? So this teacher recommended having people available to go into the homes to instruct the parents on how to use it, and then leaving materials with them that would help them the next time they needed to get a student online. So there are things that we're going to have to do that are a whole lot different than before to get us through this pandemic.
We share some interesting backgrounds together. Excuse me. We've both been involved in education and in some ways with training, and that comes through in your answers. There's people don't realize how much is involved in the educational process. And you certainly understand that. So I have another real quickie. I think that you've answered this somewhat already, but what would be your priorities in the State House regarding improving education in the region? And you can just mention, 2 or 3 specific things that you think beyond bringing in good teachers and supporting those teachers. What are some of the other things that you think would help improve education?
We absolutely have to look at broadband and making sure that every student has access to broadband. We are disadvantaging low-income families from the get-go when they don't have access to high-speed internet. That absolutely has to happen. Lunch programs, breakfast programs, making sure we keep those programs. One of the huge challenges of getting kids back to school and trying to social distance is busing kids. Mm-hmm. How are we going to get kids to and from school safely, and making sure that they're not passing on COVID to each other, or the flu, because we've got the flu season coming upon us too. So definitely technology is a huge thing, and lifting those families out of poverty, because poverty is what keeps holding these kids back.
Thank you for the depth of your answers. Thank you so much. Another new topic, environmental safety and protection. I want to let you know that there was overwhelming support for I got several different suggestions on questions in this important area. So I had to kind of, whittle this down a little bit. What is your view regarding who should have input into projects that can have serious implications for our citizens and the environment? And then who should decide, let's ask that a little differently. Should the lawmakers then abide by this input?
Sometimes lawmakers have more information than the general public does. So I do think that ultimately we elect our officials, and that we have to have faith and trust in those individuals. But I do think that in any given situation, you need to bring all the stakeholders together. And I'm sure that you probably got questions about line 5 in particular. And our society has become an either or, and it does not have to be that way. Line 5, we need to bring together environmentalists. We need to bring together union folks. And we need to talk about what is the best way to provide fuel to people who need it. Now, how do we know what that is? Well, if we don't talk to the citizens about what their needs are, how are we going to know? So we do need to have a mechanism in which we can listen to the citizenship and say, this is what we need, this is what we're comfortable with. You know, we can look at line 5 and we can offer a ton of alternatives on sustainable energy. We can take our union workers, these people are smart people, they have great skills, and we can retrain them. But we need to make sure that the citizens in the UP in particular, who are deeply affected by this, get their needs met for energy. And that's really important. Another thing is the Green Deal. People are like, why weren't the farmers included in that discussion? As they well should have been. They could provide ideas from a different point of view. We have, as a society, have kind of gotten some tunnel vision. So one of the things that I want to work on, and that would be working in unity in the legislature, working with the governor, with other legislators to make sure all our needs are met. Now, I know that I'm not going to get everything I want. I'm going to have to negotiate, but I need to be able to explain to other lawmakers the needs in my district. And they're going to need to explain their needs to me. And we're going to need to work together to find solutions to that. And especially when we're the environment. You know, we can do all of these other things. We can have great jobs, we can have great healthcare, but if we destroy our earth, it really just doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. And you're right. Many people were thinking about Enbridge and the Nestle, situation, which is not in our district, but we certainly want to honor, the residents of adjacent areas in Michigan. We are Michigan. We're one state. We're all in this together. So
yes, we are.
Those are very important. Okay. I have a couple of other specific environmental questions, but I think you'll be able to answer these really quickly. What types of legislative actions would you support to deal with climate and environmental issues? For example, greenhouse gases, water quality, resource depletion, things like upgrading septic systems to help, take care of pollution in our lakes. It's not just the Enbridge situation that is threatening our many livelihoods and health in and around Michigan and other states. Could you tackle that one?
So I think some of the things that I'm glad you brought up the septic systems in particular. I do not understand why people object to making sure that our septic systems are safe. To me, that's just good healthcare policy, but so is wearing a mask. That's good healthcare policy. We need to look at these things from the perspective that they are. So septic tank regulation is very important to protecting our waterways, our soil, and yes, I do support it, and I actually lost an endorsement over that one. That's okay. I'm going to do things like that because my priority is the health and safety of the people in our district. Erosion. People are putting up seawalls, which actually may be a great short-term solution, but we need to look to more long-term solutions, restoring our beaches. And we need to do a lot more study, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know the answer to how we preserve our shoreline, but we can't have our houses falling into the lakes. So I would definitely think that we're going to have to come up with the funding to look at alternatives other than seawalls. That's just a temporary thing. And how much sand can you haul into an area? And there are federal rules that limit that too. So at a certain point, you can't even do that anymore. So we're going to have to do a lot of research when it comes to how are we going to lower the water levels and protect our shorelines and our lakes. Because when that water levels up, we actually are increasing our pollution as well.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? It's a delicate system. Yeah. And we're living, living witnesses, so to speak, to how quickly things can happen. Even though it's, maybe eons, a process that takes eons, there are times during there where you see more drastic change. And that's what we're dealing with now in the region. So thank you very much for your answer for that one. Couple more here, if you've got the stamina, just a couple more. Okay. This question is about transparency in government. Michigan ranks pretty low in their rankings for transparency in government. I'm still trying to figure out what all of that means, and I hope you'll give us a peek over the pale in terms of what kinds of things we should be concerned about in terms of that rating. And how do you, as a citizen of Michigan, feel about that? And what influence can you provide, or can the legislator itself provide, if it chooses to improve transparency throughout Michigan government?
You're right, we're at the bottom in terms of transparency. Our legislators are not subject to FOIA. We don't have to file financial statements. Those are things that, again, it's, open up your checkbook. When I look at your checkbook, I can tell you who you're beholding to. You're going to peek at mine here soon because we're getting ready to file reports, and the people who donate to me are people. And so we do have, the state provides legislators with a good wage and a per diem. We shouldn't be taking gifts, lunches, trips, we shouldn't be taking those things. Those are things that, I'm sorry, I can afford to buy my own lunch. And any legislator who's making 70 grand a year can afford to buy their own lunch. We should have to report any conflicts of interest financially. I have potential conflicts of interest because of my husband being a physician. Those will be things that I will have to disclose, in my opinion, even if it's not required. And there may be times when I would have to excuse myself from something because of that conflict. And I think that our legislators need to be willing to stand up and do that. They need to be willing to say where they get their donations from. Some of the dark money that is in our politics, that's dangerous. And we've seen what it's done to our country. And on a state level, what we can do is we can pass some laws that make us accountable. And we can quit taking things from lobbyists.
Thank you. Thank you for your opinions and your values about that. This is actually the last question, but it's not an easy one. One of your top 10 categories is the safety of citizens in the 101st District. We've covered healthcare, we've covered the economy, we've covered education. All of those impact safety in a long-term way, in a preparatory way, teaching people how to be safe, how to understand, the importance of septic systems. That should be taught in school, So rounding out, okay, this interview, I have a question. How do we improve safety of all ages, people of all ages, all backgrounds, and all areas of our state, and in particular the 101st District, when we are a gun-owning country?
Well, I'm a gun owner, and I consider myself a responsible gun owner. I didn't purchase my first gun until after I went through training down at the Demmer Center at Michigan State University. And I don't think that you should be allowed to purchase a gun until you can prove that you can clean it and that you know how to use it. and that you understand the laws surrounding it. I have no problem with extended waiting periods. If you walk into a store and say you need to buy a gun today, that's a concern. There are at-risk laws that I would support. If a person is identified as being a risk to themselves or to others, our law enforcement should be able to go in and take their weapons until they're able to get a hearing. So I do believe that you should be able to own guns for hunting. We have 70 acres. My husband and my son-in-law and his brother hunt on our land. And that's great. And, you know, like I said, we own guns in our home. But the Second Amendment isn't untethered. You know, there is responsibility that goes with every one of our amendments. Every right that we have has a responsibility. And I don't think it's too much to ask people to know how to use something that can kill other people. I don't think it's too much to ask that you know how to take care of it. And it's not too much to ask that you understand the laws that govern it. And if you think that's too much, perhaps you shouldn't be owning a gun. I do not adhere to the school of let's take them all and melt them down. You know, honestly, if that came along and someone said, we're going to take your guns and we're going to melt them down, I'm not so attached to my guns that that I'd riot in the streets. I do recognize that we do have Second Amendment rights, but those rights have responsibilities, and we need to act accordingly. And if we're going to keep our people of all ages safe, there've got to be some rules. I'm sorry, if you can't fly on a plane, you should not be able to buy a gun. If you are such a risk to our society that you flying is dangerous, why in the world would we allow you to buy a gun? Now, that's not anything we can do on a state level. That's definitely something that has to be done on a federal level. But there are things that, you know, we as a state can ask, you know, and advocate with our federal partners. You know, President Obama signed an executive order making sure that people who were suffering from mental illness didn't have access to weapons. Suicides, gun suicides, happen because of easy access to guns. And we as citizens, we should be teaching gun safety in school. Now I remember, you know, maybe because of where I grew up, that we were exposed to gun safety. Children need to be taught that, you know, guns aren't toys, and that there's a responsibility that goes along with that, and that we need to help keep each other safe. And if you know, it goes to if you see something, say something. If you see a classmate who is depressed and doesn't, you know, says they don't want to live anymore, and they say that, you know, their dad has a gun, you know, nobody wants to narc on their buddy. But you need to see, if you see it, you need to say something about it. And that goes for every age group. As adults, if we notice that our neighbor is, you know, acting erratically and out shooting guns at all hours of the day and night and angry, you know, it doesn't hurt to pick up the phone and call the sheriff or your local police chief and say, I have concerns. Our law enforcement can't be everywhere all the time. We have to be willing to say something. I'd like to see stricter rules in terms of education and training. To get a CPL, you have to go through training, and you're evaluated as you're going through that training. It's not just a matter of shooting at a target. It's not just taking a test. The people who are the instructors are evaluating, and they're looking for certain signs in the individuals, and, you know, they choose whether you pass or not. I'd like to see that just for gun purchases.
Well, that is a complicated issue, and Beth, thank you very much for your explanation that with everything in life, as part of a democracy, yes, freedom is so important, but with every freedom comes responsibility. And that's what makes us the country that we are. So thank you for that. Beth, I think that's it for my questions. I'd like to give you an opportunity to give a ending statement, to pick up anything that I didn't focus on. And at some point, we may have an opportunity to have you come on for a second interview, and we hope we'll be able to do that. But for right now, can you give us a little bit of a final, just covering things that maybe we didn't cover and that you want to say from your heart in regard to talking directly to the citizens that will be your constituents, potentially your constituents.
Thank you, Judy. I'm running for the 101st State House of Representatives because I have a vision for our district. Throughout the chaos of COVID-19, my reasons for running have changed. My platform didn't change, but the reasons behind it have. I want to get people back to work, but not at the risk of their lives. I want to get Michigan back on the road to economic recovery. And the way that we're going to do that is by improving our infrastructure and creating good union jobs with excellent benefits and providing good time off and supporting our small businesses. Our small businesses, some of these folks are going to lose their livelihood, but we as communities can help them rebuild that livelihood. What we can't do is we can't give them back their child. We can't give them back their spouse. We can't give them back their parent, their grandparent, or their friend. So that's important to remember when we make these decisions. You know, you've heard me say throughout today, and I say it a lot, my number one priority will be the health and safety of the residents of the 101st. I want to get our students back to school, but not at the risk of their lives and the educators' lives. Our educators have proven through COVID-19 how innovative they can be. Let's trust them to find solutions to getting students back to school. And that doesn't necessarily mean showing up in a building. COVID-19 stressed our healthcare system. It showed us how vital our rural hospitals are, especially when people were so ill, traveling to a major city would just not be an option. It's not just enough to have those rural hospitals, but we have to have people in those hospitals that are qualified and skilled. From the person who is cleaning the bathrooms to the person at the very top and everyone in between. We need to make sure that they get the job training that they need, or the education that they need, and the continuing education and job training that they need to make them successful. Strong leaders make difficult decisions, and they have a vision, and I'm that leader. I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to talk today and to answer questions. I haven't had a lot of opportunity to do that this time. Campaign has been very different than previous campaigns, and this is a great opportunity for me. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Beth, for taking the time and for sharing so openly your values and how those relate to policies and positions that you may be dealing with and using as you're dealing with issues in the months and years to come related to work in the state house. So, we'd love to have you come back again as time permits and your busy schedule and our programming schedule. And so thank you. And again, I'd just like to let the audience know that you've got information on the bottom of your screen so that you can go to Beth's website and also the website for the Traverse Area Community Media, where you can watch on TV. There's on the homepage, you'll see a program schedule, and you can look for the times when the program will be shown on TV, or you can actually specifically go in any time of the day, 24 hours a day, and use that search bar on the homepage and put in the information for this program, and that'll bring this up. And so you can send that link to individuals that you feel would benefit from learning a little bit more about Beth and about the whole process of running for a political office. Thank you very much, Beth. You've given us a peek over the pale into the hard work it takes, the heart it takes, and the creativity that it takes, and the determination that it takes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.